My name is Monica Little, and my husband Tom and I have been serving as missionaries in East Timor for the past 3 years through Global Ministries, which is the mission branch of the United Church of Christ and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So as introduction, I would like to let you know that we served with the Protestant Church of East Timor. They are our partners in East Timor. And Tom and I were in East Timor with our family. We have a daughter who's 8 years old. Her name's Hannah. And while we were in East Timor, we also had a son named Simon. As far as some background, Tom is a carpenter by trade. And when he was asked to go to East Timor, he was asked to help with the capacity building for our church partners. Pretty vague, yes indeed, but he'll tell you more about that during our presentation. My background is as a naturopathic physician and also a midwife. I had a private practice in Duluth before we went to East Timor, and I was invited to serve in one of our partner church's clinics, in a rural village clinic in East Timor, to serve as the doctor there. So in 2009, Tom and I received the invitation, and we have been in East Timor serving for 3 years, and we came back in July. Since we've been back, we've been itinerating, going around sharing about our experiences. Tom started seminary in September. Our daughter Hannah started 3rd grade, and Simon and I have been traveling around the country since July, speaking to UCC churches and disciples churches. So I'll go ahead and let Tom share a little bit, and we'll be showing you some pictures and talking about our experiences. Yeah.
We're members of Peace at UCC in Duluth. And I'd like to start by talking a little bit about the context in which we do our mission work in the United Church of Christ and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So the paper that I handed out to you is the recent sort of reformulation of our vision and mission in the UCC and the Disciples Church, and it's very similar to what you'd find in the Presbyterian Church also. So, but to receive and share the good news of Jesus Christ by joining with global and local partners to work for justice, reconciliation, and peace. And I think this is a really important thing to understand with our mission work. You might notice that the first sentence is to receive and share the good news of Jesus Christ, and that is our mission. We strongly feel that we receive as much from our partners as we have to share. Indeed, we go with various different skills and capacities to help our partners in their ministries, to support them and walk with them in their ministries. But a large part, at least half of the reason we're there, is to receive the gifts of the global church and to infuse our own faith and journey with Jesus with their faith. And that's a tremendous part of it. We're not there to rescue or fix the churches that are there. We're not there to tell them how to do their ministries, how to conduct their ministries. We're there to be in community, to be in partnership with people, and to experience what the life of the church is like in these places, most of which are post-colonial places that have a lot of brokenness because of the history of colonialism, and part of our journey in that has been confronting that reality of both the damage that we've often done in mission work and trying to reformulate, rethink what can we do, how can we sort of reimagine working in mission globally. There's a lot of similarities between ourselves and our partners all over the world, our common humanity, the problems that we confront in interpersonal communication, in running the church, in being the church. we have a lot of the same hopes for the future, and yet there's a lot of differences between ourselves and our partners all around the world. And one of the biggest ones is opportunity. Opportunities for our partners around the world are very limited, and East Timor is certainly no exception to that. It's just for the many young, smart, very talented, capable people after high school, what can I do? How is the country developing so that people can utilize there? So I'm not going to spend much time on the geography because it's not the most important piece, but it is important to know where East Timor is. It's in the midst of Indonesia. Australia is right down here, and I guess there's about 1 million people. The eastern part of the island of Timor is about the size of the state of Connecticut, and yet it's about the size of the United States in terms of the amount of time that it takes to get around the country. So depending on how you understand the size, what does that mean? You can think of it in different ways. We lived in Los Palos here, which is about a 5-hour drive from the capital city, Dili. It's about 150 miles. It takes between 5 and 6 hours to get there. And you notice when you look at the upper map there that there's this one little half island that is not part of Indonesia. And that's the reason for that has to do with the colonial history. Most of Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch. And this part of East Timor, or the island of Timor, was colonized by the Portuguese. So the Dutch and the Portuguese fought a war over this island, primarily because of the sandalwood that was there at the time. This was 450 years ago. Long history of colonialization. It was then and is today largely a subsistence farming culture. These, in this lower right-hand picture here, are water buffalo plowing a rice field, running back and forth, and that's still how many people develop rice paddies in East Timor. So as I said, the history of East Timor is one of colonial presence, 400 years of Portuguese presence, and then more recently, occupation by Indonesia, and then the last 10 years, independence. The Portuguese were there for 400 years. They did not develop the country. They didn't do a lot in terms of development. After World War II, when Indonesia gained its independence, the Portuguese stayed. Okay, so East Timor was never part of Indonesia. It was in 1975 that the Portuguese finally decided to leave East Timor, and the Timorese people right away declared independence, to be followed by an invasion the following day by Indonesia. And that invasion and the subsequent occupation of 25 years was supported by all the Western governments, especially Australia, the United States, Great Britain, in various different ways for various different reasons, primarily because of the economic and the strategic position of Indonesia. Just talk a little bit about my work, and then Monica will talk about working in the clinic. Monica's call to work with the Protestant Church of East Timor was primarily the main reason that we were called there, and I was sort of along for the ride in a way. I've been a carpenter for most of my adult life, so find that that's always a useful skill in context. What I did was a combination of construction work, which I did with local carpenters. We remodeled the entire clinic, including putting on a new roof and basically rehabilitating the place. And also did some teaching English and some help with developing computer skills, teaching Sunday school, preaching in village churches, youth work, and whatever else would come up in the course of the day. So it's mostly about, for us, you know, we have skills to bring to the context, but it's about being in partnership and being there in community with the people. We lived in a compound where the clinic that Monica worked in, the local church, there's a pastor's house there, another house where kids from the village would come to go to school. And so we lived in that community, and that was our context, you know, just day to day. So our life sort of revolved around a group of, you know, 20, 30, 40 people that were sort of coming in and out of our lives, and we were coming in and out of their lives through the work of the clinic and the local church, and in sort of organic fashion. So.
Do you want to talk about the rural visitation program?
Oh yes, one of the main things that I did was to help the pastors in the Protestant church there kind of reimagine their rural ministry. During the Indonesian period, most Indonesian Christians are Protestant because of the Dutch colonial history again. So when the Indonesians left, half the church members left, almost all the clergy left, almost all the elders, and all the money. And yet they had little groups of church members all around these areas that had, for various different reasons, become Protestants. 98% of Timorese people are Roman Catholic. So that 10 years on after independence, the church there now sort of finds itself in this, okay, what do we do now with all these little groups? Some have big churches and no people, and then other places have 5 or 6 or 10 families and no church. So we worked together a couple of days a week. We would go and visit people and try to figure out, you know, how can you do ministry in this kind of context when you've got so few resources, and you're needing to reimagine what is a ministry like in that context. What is God doing through the power of the Holy Spirit, you know, in this kind of context, and reimagining that. And that was a very rich experience for me to hear and to go through that process with them.
Tom just mentioned how when the Indonesians left East Timor, they took all the resources, they took the leadership, they took the money, they took so much of what was kind of holding the church together. That was true for basically all the society structures. For 24 years, Indonesia occupied East Timor. And the Timorese people are very proud and very strong, and they did not want to be part of Indonesia. At least most of them didn't. There were some that did, but the majority did not, and they fought a guerrilla war for 24 years. So when the United Nations and the world finally were on board with East Timor and said, let these people determine their own future. Let them vote. Do they want to be part of Indonesia, or do they want independence? Indonesia was very, very discouraged and upset because the Timorese people voted, vast majority voted to be an independent country. So what the Indonesians did was they destroyed about 75% of the infrastructure. The doctors that the Indonesians had sent to build up the medical system in East Timor went back to Indonesia. The teachers that were building up the educational system in East Timor went back to Indonesia. The administrators, the people who knew how to do things, left when East Timor declared their independence. So you're left with this structure that's devastated, physically devastated, because the Indonesian military burned and tore things down, and then the leadership has also evacuated. So there were a few nurses and hospital staff that were still around, but not too many. There were some teachers, but not so many. And so for the last 10 plus years that the Timorese have been independent, they've been really working to try to build up their systems in this modern day system, and it's difficult. So what I came into in the clinic was a small, pretty well-functioning clinic, to tell you the truth. There had been a German missionary that started this clinic in coordination with our partner church in 1991. And she had sort of handpicked these young women to work with her. They didn't have nursing training. They were like right out of high school. Some of them don't even have a high school degree. But she handpicked them because they were church members, and she saw that they had potential, and she thought they would be good workers. And I ended up working with these women. So when I got to East Timor, I worked at Clinic Emmanuel with 5 women. There's 4 of them here. And the 3 to my, well, on the right side here, those 3 have all been working at the clinic for 10 years or more. The one in the white shirt standing next to me, she started the clinic with this German missionary. She's been working there 20 years. She's a year older than me. She's 42 years old. She has 5 kids, barely finished high school. And yet she does everything a nurse would do and more. Okay, so the clinic is a primary care clinic. We do not have inpatient services. We see patients 5 days a week. We offer, this is a typical Monday morning when people are lining up at the door, waiting their turn to sign in so they can be seen. It's just general care, men, women, old, young, everything. The clinic sees about 1,200 patients a month. So lots of people with not too many staff. We have a laboratory so we can diagnose tuberculosis and malaria. We were able to begin some new programs while I was there. We started a malnutrition program, we started a prenatal care program, and we also started mobile clinics. So there is a government hospital in Los Palos. Los Palos is a pretty small community, but it's sort of the core of an entire district. So about 60,000 people will filter into Los Palos for whatever they need, whether it's goods from a store that they can't get out in their village, or medical care, or just via Los Palos to get to other big cities in the country. Big cities is kind of neat. But so the local hospital does have midwives, and they provide all kinds of, they provide prenatal care, postpartum care, delivery, family planning services. They do immunizations. They do it all, but they're really not able to do all that they need to do with the small number of staff that they have. So when I was working at the clinic, I realized that there was a lot of room for improvement with the prenatal care that women were receiving in Los Palos. And so I said, because my forte is maternity care, I decided that I needed to do something and try to improve the prenatal care in Los Palos. So I started a prenatal care program at our clinic, and the staff were incredibly enthusiastic. These women loved to learn about pregnant women and pregnancy, and how do you know what's normal, what's not normal. So I taught the staff how you do a prenatal exam, a very basic prenatal exam, and I also instituted using blood tests, HIV testing and anemia testing, hematocrit hemoglobin testing for pregnant women, because the hospital midwives were not utilizing these services that they had at their access in the hospital. So when people would come to our clinic, we would check their bellies and we would weigh them and always check their blood pressure. I trained our clinic staff that these are the things you need to do every time. And then we would always send women for blood tests. HIV is not a big problem in East Timor yet, but I fear that it will be, because about 50% of the population has never even heard of HIV to this day. So this little guy came into the clinic, and he had had diarrhea for 6 weeks, and he had not received treatment yet. So when he came in, he had kwashiorkor, or malnutrition. You often think of malnutrition, severe malnutrition, acute malnutrition. The pictures come up for what you see in Africa, where people are really, really skin and bones. And if you look at this picture of this little guy, you see a big tummy, and he looks kind of skinny, but he also looks sort of swollen. With kwashiorkor malnutrition, you're losing protein, and so you get swelling in your feet, in your legs, and also in your hands. And you also get skin issues. Can you go back? I'm not sure what happened there.
That's right.
You also get some skin issues. So he has wounds in his corners of his mouth. His skin is peeling. If you look at his legs down there, he's got skin that's sort of starting to slough off. And this child required hospitalization. So we saw him at the clinic. I heard his story. I tried for a couple of days to treat him with antibiotics and see if he could receive the treatment we were offering at the clinic, and it was clear that it wasn't making enough of a difference quickly enough. So I ended up going to his house and speaking with both his mother and his father to convince them that they needed to take him to the regional hospital a couple of hours away for inpatient care. So he did recover. Our malnutrition program at the clinic was twofold. One, it was to identify kids like this who are in kind of dire straits and need more intensive care and get them that care. And probably the biggest piece of our malnutrition program was just trying to grab those children who were more in a moderate malnutrition range, so not desperately ill, but that were not getting what they needed, and try to provide them with daily food at the clinic through a warm, protein-rich meal every day, and then more regular care. So we would have them come in every day, eat at the clinic, and then I would every Friday do a weigh-in with the kids and do a one-on-one check-in with the parents and find out how the children are faring. When they were able to gain some weight and their health was improving, we would send them off. This is a young man, 20 years old. I used to not have tuberculosis written up there, and I would say, what do you think this kid has? So I'm just curious, here in this group, do any of you know anyone who has had tuberculosis? Can you raise your hand if you do? Okay, so some of you. Yeah, is that more currently or in the past?
I was a child.
When you were a child?
My mother had it.
Ah, okay.
In the past.
In the past? Anyone more current, or you think?
Current.
Yeah? Okay. Are you a healthcare
I'm a
professional?
healthcare.
Okay. So in East Timor, TB is a real scourge. It is everywhere. And it's not uncommon for 20-year-olds to develop tuberculosis, and they come into the clinic looking like this. They're wasted, they have fever. Typically, pulmonary tuberculosis is what we see, but as you know, tuberculosis can be manifested in any organ of your body. So the type that's the most serious, because it can be contagious, is pulmonary tuberculosis. And so this is what we're really worried about in East Timor, because there's so much crowding in housing. People are living close together. People are unaware of the implications of a cough, of the possibility of tuberculosis. People don't understand the basic medical science that even lay people in this country do. So when people start developing tuberculosis, they often are maybe reluctant to get health care, or they have difficulty accessing health care, or maybe they go to get health care and the providers aren't really aware of it, and so they're not getting the treatment they need, and then they can spread the disease to other people in the family or the community. So Joni was sick for months, and when I found out about him, I did a home visit, and I immediately suspected that he had tuberculosis. He had just a mild cough. His main complaint was abdominal pain, but he was wasted, and he just was completely lethargic. And I said, you know, there's a clinic just a quarter of a mile down the road from you, a government clinic. You should really go and be assessed there. And he and his family were very reluctant to go to the government clinic. So it took a month before they came to our clinic. When they came to our clinic, we checked his sputum immediately, and we indeed found tuberculosis. He started on tuberculosis meds. At the time he came in, he had a fever. He was in this kind of shape, and after he started the medication and received treatment, this is what he looked like in 2 months. He was a new person. 2 months. So you need to take tuberculosis medicine a lot longer than 2 months to have complete treatment and cure. However, this is the kind of response you get when you find a case and treat it, and it's the right treatment. So, don't turn it down. Can you go back? So HIV gets a lot of press, and yesterday was World AIDS Day. Tuberculosis is devastating the world as much as HIV is, and yet it's sort of this silent killer. And so in East Timor, this is, at this point in time, much more serious issue, and so treatable, and so able to be remedied. And so I realized as a missionary, as a Christian, as a healthcare provider working in the developing world, that it's not just in East Timor, it's in every developing country in the world. This is something that needs to be attended to, because we can do something about it. People don't have to die from tuberculosis. HIV, we don't yet have a cure for. Tuberculosis, usually we do.
I want to share with you a story that maybe is just sort of a snapshot of the kind of relationships and mutuality that we try to practice in our mission work in Timor. Layla is a little girl here. You can see her sitting right here, and she's sitting up there with Hannah and over there. We met, her family are members of the local church where we were serving, and we met her through the clinic. Although they're members of the church, they have 6 kids, right? Her parents have 6 kids, and the youngest one, baby, brought in similar story to the story of Aldi, very malnourished, very sick. Went through a process with them, helping, ended up transferring this child to the hospital in Bocau, came back. To make a long story short, we had Layla help us out. This is probably one of the poorest families in the church. One of the families that struggles the most to get by. And we're not there to do handouts or to do things for people. So we sort of talked with the pastors and lay leaders in the church, and how can this family is constantly coming in with these different problems that are a direct result of poverty and living in close quarters and really struggling. What we ended up doing was helping the family out with rice. They helped us out with laundry. They helped us out in various different ways. And what evolved out of this was a real close friendship between Layla and her daughter Hannah. And also, Layla would come over to our house. She would wash our clothes in the afternoon. And we would get them rice every once in a while. Well, not long after this started, Layla would come over probably once a week. She'd bring a chicken over, and then it would just, we would have a chicken. And this went on for several months. And before we left, Layla's father, who never came to church, who rarely showed up in the clinic because he was primarily watching the kids, and her mother would be selling vegetables in the market. The last night we were there, he shows up at our doorstep with a giant bag of potatoes. Actually, not potatoes, but something we don't have in this country that are like potatoes, and gives that to us for our going away feast. And I share this story because it's one of these experiences that you have in a context like this where although there seems to be such a difference in many ways between our economic status and our background, lots of different things, there's a sharing and a mutuality that can occur, and that you can give and take with people in a context like that, which you don't often experience. And this is a young woman that worked with Monica in the clinic as the lab tech. She's currently here in St. Paul with us, and Global Ministries and our local church in Duluth is helping her out to get some more advanced training in medical technology. So she will go back and continue working in the clinic as a medical lab technician.
Let me share a little bit more about Amena. Amena's 25 years old, and she's worked at the clinic with me the entire time that we were there. She's the oldest of 8 children. She's a woman. She's a daughter. And when I started working with Amena in Los Palos, she's from Los Palos. All her family's right on her street there. And when I started working with her, I immediately recognized that she was this young, bright woman who had a lot of potential. She graduated from high school in East Timor in Los Palos, and then she didn't have anything to do. And she was getting kind of depressed. So she ended up hooking up with the local Red Cross and volunteering with the local Red Cross. And she did this for a year and a half or two. She learned about first aid. She became a trainer, so she would go out into other villages and train people in basic first aid, something that's not well known in East Timor. She also got training in HIV and diarrhea through Red Cross, and also something called tracing, which is like finding missing persons, which at first seemed a little odd to me, and then I realized, well, my gosh, this is a country that's been in a war for a long time, so of course there's missing people, so of course this is useful information. So Amena did this, and then she had an opportunity to do kind of a volunteer training, learning at the local hospital in laboratory. And while she was there, she learned how to do blood smears for malaria, and she learned how to do sputum smears for TB, which are essentially the only things that happen in the lab in Los Palos. You have to go to a bigger town to do more lab work. But she learned how to do these things. She got very little oversight. She learned some basics, but her training was not great. She spent 7 months at the hospital unpaid, but it was something to do, and she was learning. And after this, the door opened up for her to work at Clinic Emmanuel. And so she took the job at Clinic Emmanuel and started getting a small salary, and became the lab technician there. And over the course of my time working with her, I was really pushing her to try to get some other experiences where she could. I would give her some lab books and try to help her understand what red blood cells were, what white blood cells were, looking through the microscope. And I could tell she was very, very interested in learning. She also had a little bit of English capacity when we first got to East Timor. And over the course of being there, it grew. And then last November, just exactly about a year ago, we started looking into her coming to school in the United States because we had had some visitors from our home church in Duluth. And our friends said, you know, we just think Amena is the cat's meow. And if she would come to school in America, we would love to host her. And I said, really? Really, would you want to do that? And they said, we really, really would. So Global Ministries had expressed interest in supporting continuing education for the staff. Here was a host family popping up. And I said, well, let's just try to make this happen. So Amena has applied to Lake Superior College in Duluth. And she's essentially accepted, except that her English is not where it needs to be. So right now she's living with us. She's taking courses at Global Language Institute in downtown St. Paul. And she will take a few more months of English language, and then next fall she will start up in Duluth and do an AA program in medical laboratory technology. So Global Ministries tells us we're not allowed to ask for money, but I want you to know that this is an opportunity for really supporting the mission of our partners through Amena's education. She will go back to Los Palos, and she's committed to working in Clinic Emmanuel for a couple of years when she returns. And she will be able to really build the capacity not only at Clinic Emmanuel, but in East Timor overall, because there is no laboratory training in East Timor at this time. And she will, as a real leader, she will be an asset to her community. She's already gotten kudos from Global Language Institute for her work ethic as a student.